and this is a disk that moves through. You can't see it real well on here, but if you were to look at it, it looks just like the traditional flying saucer. And the galaxy is also a living being that is alive, just like you and me. It has a very high level of consciousness. It has a completely integrated cellular level, which we call like humans or ETs, who are all working together in a single body. It's not Star Wars like we think. It's very much more like your own body, where where the brain cells and the heart cells and the different kinds of appearing bodies are actually functioning together in a larger system for the greater good of all. And we have exactly the same shape around us if we breathe in a certain way. And the Merkaba is a vehicle. It's a vehicle that you use to get here in this planet, and when you die, it'll be the same vehicle that you use to get to wherever you're going after that. And it is a vehicle. And in the Torah, in the Israeli way of seeing things, the Merkaba was pronounced Merkava, and when you translate Merkava into English, it means the chariot or a vehicle. It's much more than a vehicle. That's one of its aspects. It literally can become anything in existence. But that's another subject that we can't put forth here right now. Now, and that's the basic information that came out through the Flower of Life. Though the information that's going to be presented here today will also be in Volume 2 of The Ancient Secret, The Flower of Life. And this is where we left everybody. We left them, we told them how to create it. We didn't say what it was or what to do with it. And that was what the workshop called the Earth Sky Workshop, which we've been doing for the last 3 years, is the information of what to do once you've now established this field around you, how to create it and what it can do and what it means for human life. Right up here is a little flying saucer, a craft. These are pictures from Billy Myers out of Switzerland, I think it is. Yes. And they are, most of us, as we have evolved over this thing with flying saucers and UFOs, there has been so much written about this. There has been so much said about it, and a lot of it's pretty outrageous. A lot of it's probably not true. A lot of it is true, but being veiled, and it's hard to know what is the truth anymore. The governments have definitely veiled this one from us, but there's something that took place a long time ago in the very, very, very beginning of this phenomena that was recorded. And the recording of this is important, though it has at this point been almost completely lost. You see, there were, in the very, very beginning of UFOs, as modern day ones, I'm not talking about ones that happened perhaps hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago, but in this century, relative to the massive outbreaks of sightings, happened almost on a single day. It wasn't something that slowly spreadered in. It went wham, like that, bam, they were there. And it happened in Europe in 1946. In the summer of 1946, suddenly everybody in Europe was seeing these UFOs. Nowhere else in the world. The following summer, in the summer of 1947, in the United States, in a single day, bam, they were all over the United States. And the Air Force set up an investigation. It was called Project Sign, S-I-G-N. And it's interesting because they really didn't know who was doing this. They went through a lot of convulsions, basically, trying to figure it out. Originally, they thought it was the Russians. They said, those Russians got a hold of the German stuff, and now they're doing this thing. And they did extensive research to find out if the Russians were really doing this, and they finally came up with the conclusion, well, it's not the Russians. Then they the project turned in on themselves and said, it's probably us. We're doing this. were secretly doing this, and they did extensive research to find out if there was any kind of secret programs going on around this, and came up with the conclusion, it's not us, it's not them, there is nobody else. Who in the heck is doing this? Well, it went from Project Sign to Project Grudge to Project Blue Book over a few years, and the head of Project Grudge and the head of Project Blue Book, a man named Captain Edward Ruppelt, you can see it down here, Ruppelt, R-U-P-P-E-L-T, who witnessed all of this stuff in the beginning days, wrote a book when he got out of the Air Force. He put it all down in this called the Report on the Unidentified Flying Objects. He wrote it all down. He wrote down everything that happened, the name and address of every person involved, their rank, where it was, how it happened, what they felt when they were going through these things, and the original experience of all of this, and the whole thing about you know, the thing where they were saying they were weather balloons and things like this. Well, many of them were weather balloons. I believe it was Motorola, I can't remember for sure, who had this called the Skyhook Project, and they had these giant weather balloons that were huge, and they were silver, and then when they were in the sky they were really bright, and they would get up into the jet streams and move at 300 miles an hour, and they would look like flying saucers or UFOs. But they mapped every one of those things. They knew exactly where they were, and so they could tell if somebody was seeing one of those or something else. And so he describes what they went through, how they did everything. They even had their pilots say, you know, they could say, well, it was a reflection on their cockpit. It was what it was. So they had them tilt their planes to see if that's what it was. They had everything imaginable that they could think of, just like investigating a murder, on who was doing this. And it's real obvious when you read this that that he was being sincere in putting this out. It's interesting. Soon after he wrote this, he died at 39 years old and disappeared because they didn't want this out, and that book just disappeared. No one talks about it anymore. But it's still available out there if you look, if you find for it. There's still a few copies running around. And the first thing that's so important to realize, in the original sightings from 1946 through 1952, which is when he actually quit this in here, the first 5 years of all of this in there, all the sightings, almost without exception, were over military bases. All over the world. They weren't from you and I. They weren't from cities or, you know, hippies sitting on a corner saying, there goes one. This was from very special people. I mean, they were people who had high credentials and PhDs and everything else who worked for the military. They were pilots with F-16s and F-18s, hundreds of them. There were 44,000 sightings in the United States alone in those 5 years. 44,000 sightings, according to this book. And they only received to this project, the Project Blue Book, a little over 10%, about 4,400 of them. And they investigated those sightings like crazy. And if there was anything in one of a sighting that could possibly be a mistake, maybe it was a weather balloon, or maybe it was a reflection, or maybe it was an asteroid, or maybe it was just another plane or something else like that, they threw it out. If it was even the remote chance that it was wrong, but they still came up with just slightly under 800 sightings that there was absolutely no doubt whatsoever that these things were true UFOs. These were sightings with F-18 airplane falling right behind them, with people watching them in there, with people on the ground watching them go by, and with the radars tracking them at the same time. And so it's real clear, if you get this original writing, that this was not some phony baloney thing that was going on. This was a very real phenomenon. And all the kinds of things that we hear nowadays, the kinds of stuff where, like, you see them going really fast and making a 90-degree turn and disappearing, and all these kinds of things, they're all written up in this book here. They all witnessed this right in the very beginning. They identified all the shapes that we're used to. The flying saucer shape, which was the main one, the long cigar shape, The delta wing ones, triangular shaped ships,